Why is my wrist hurting? And why isn't shaking them helping? There must be some way to get them strong again. What's going on, guys? It's Vaughn here from Body Elements. Now, I know why you're here. You know why you're here. It's because we need to look after our little old wristies. Oh, don't say that. I mean wrists. Now, whether you already have wrist pain or you're trying to prevent wrist pain, these exercises I'm going to give you today are going to be beneficial either way. You might have noticed I got a new camera. Let me know if the quality looks any better. I really like it. Now, for some reason in modern society, we have so many sports and even lifestyle factors that can impact the health of our wrists. We have sports and exercises like hand balancing, Olympic lifting, bodyweight strength training, skateboarding, snowboarding. If you're putting heavy loads through your wrists multiple times in any session, your wrists can crumble under the pressure. You might even just be sitting at a computer for hours a day using a mouse. You're not really using the ranges we want to use for our wrist, and we're not really strengthening it in the way we want to strengthen it. Don't worry, whatever reason it is that you are here, I'm here to help. The wrist has 4 primary directions of motion. You have wrist flexion, you have wrist extension, you have ulnar deviation, and you also have radial deviation. If we do want to keep those wrists strong, healthy, and injury-free, we're going to have to train it through all those 4 different types of ranges of motion. Wrist movement can sometimes include pronation and supination, but pronation and supination are movement varieties that actually originate about the elbow and aren't independent of the wrist movement. So we're not going to worry about them today. Let's have a look at the exercises that I've used to keep my wrists healthy while doing things like hand balancing and bodyweight strength training. All of these exercises are going to be done from a kneeling position. The first exercise is just putting weight through the wrists. Now, we're going to do this in a few different directions, and we're also going to explore both flexion of the wrist and extension of the wrist. Starting on the bottom of the hand in wrist extension, the fingers can face anywhere from straight forward, out to the side, and backward towards the knees. We're just going to make random hand placements between these 3 different directions, getting a bit of weight through the hands there. We can also play around with some wrist flexion. So coming onto the front of our hands, our fingers are going to be facing toward the knee or toward each other. And as I said earlier, this is just random placements of the hand between that flexion and extension of the wrist in all those different directions we just mentioned. We'll go for about 30 seconds to a minute here, trying to get rid of any cracking and popping in the wrists and get a little bit more blood flow to the area. Next exercise we're going to do are wrist extension holds or a wrist extension stretch. As you probably guessed, this one's training wrist extension. It's mostly a stretch here, but we're also going to get a little bit of strength through those wrist flexor muscles. Starting with your hands out in front of your knees, you're going to externally rotate the hands so the fingers are facing your knees. You're going to push the shoulders away from the ears, rounding through the upper back and engaging the triceps. Keeping the shoulders pushed away from the ears and the triceps engaged, you're going to shuffle your knees back to a point where either the base of your hands start to come off the ground or you feel the stretch is a little bit too much. We want the stretch at a point where it's challenging but not unbearable. Now, in this position, we're going to push the fingers into the ground for 10 seconds to build some strength in this position using PNF. Once that 10 seconds is over, we're going to slightly bend at the elbows and lift up to the fingertips, trying to keep the knuckles of the hand on the ground. Again, we push the fingers into the ground for 10 seconds. Finally, we're coming up higher onto the fingertips, bending at the elbow more, trying to get the forearm in parallel with the ground as best you can, and push the fingers into the ground for 10 seconds. Slowly bring the knees close, take the weight out of your hands. The next exercise, and personally my favorite, especially if you're short on time, are palm raises. Now, palm raises are going to do a little bit more strengthening than stretching, but you're still going to get a little bit of both. Starting with your hands in a neutral position just in front of your knees, you're going to have the shoulders stacked on top of the hands. To increase the starting intensity here, we can have a slight forward lean without bringing the palms off the floor. Make sure the fingers are spread and not bunched together. If you are a hand balancer, this will be your hand position when you handstand. We're going to engage the triceps to keep the elbows locked. We're now going to lift the palms while keeping the knuckles of the hand down. Focusing on keeping most of the weight through the first 2 knuckles, and don't let the thumbs take any of the weight out of the lift. Then resist the lower as the palm comes down. Try not to drop too fast. You're going to repeat this one for reps. Usually you'll get a pump by at least 10 reps, sometimes by 20 if you've done this a few times. If this is still too easy for you, we can increase the intensity by walking the knees backwards or keeping our forward lean. You may even be able to do this with just your feet on the ground. Now we're going to move into a little bit of wrist flexion training. So this one is called the fin push-up. The interesting one about this one is it's not just a wrist warm-up, it's a little bit of an elbow warm-up also. With this exercise, we're going to start with the backs of the hand flat on the ground, with the fingers facing each other and starting very close to the knees, especially if you're sensitive in this position. We want the weight through the base of our hands and out of the knees as much as you can. We're facing the pit or the eye of the elbow forward, so our shoulders are starting in an externally rotated position. Now aiming to get the chest to ground, the elbows are going to come out, then push away through the ground, and again, we're going to repeat for reps. I find about 10 reps is a good range for this one. Similar to the palm raises and many of these wrist exercises, the further back the knees are, the more intense this will be. So as you get a little bit better, you can start doing them with your knees further back. Another wrist flexion exercise I like to use are called the reverse palm raises. Now I made that name up, I'm not actually sure if that's what they're called, but it's sort of what they are doing. It's just a reverse of the palm raises, right? So similar to the palm raises, this is a bit more of a strength than a stretch, but you will feel a bit of both. Starting on the back of the hands with the fingers facing the knees, with the fingers spread, we're going to actively try to lift through the front of the hands and create a fist as we do so, maintaining those locked elbows as best we can. We're then going to resist the lower as the fronts of our hands come down and open back into an open palm. Again, we can increase the intensity of this by taking the knees further back, though this is quite an intense exercise, so be conservative with it. The last exercise we're going to go through are called ulnar and radial deviation rolls, or wrist rolls. Now we haven't touched on ulnar or radial deviation yet, so this one's always good to add in at the end of any wrist warm-up or mobility routine that you're going to do. With this one, it's not quite as intense as the others, so the knees can be a fair distance from the hands. We're going to start by sitting on clenched fists with the thumb wrapped around the fingers. With the shoulders stacked on top of the fist, we're going to roll forward onto the front of our fists as far as possible. Then we're going to roll the other way, aiming to get the shoulders to the fists, with the elbows being the last thing to touch the ground. Resist the lower as you come down here. This one's also repeated for reps, and an 8 to 12 rep range is good. If you want to do more, don't be afraid to do more. With the exercises we've just gone through, you should be able to construct a routine by yourself, but I will give you this guideline that will make it a little bit easier for you to get the rep ranges, the times of holds, and makes it a little bit easier to put the routine together. This guideline is pretty much what I do to warm up before every handstand session or bodyweight strength session that requires a lot of wrist loading. With the set ranges, if you're just doing this for a warm up, generally one set of each exercise is fine, but if you are doing this to decrease your wrist pain or increase your wrist mobility, I recommend upping the sets to maybe 2 or 3 sets per exercise that's going to help you most. Using these wrist drills, you'll have unbreakable wrists, bulletproof wrists, whatever you want to call them. Not really, they're always breakable, but you will give these little wrists the best opportunity to be strong and healthy, supporting your desired activity that might be loading those wrists up a little bit. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, maybe leave a comment, and I'll catch you guys next time.